All right. Well, we're super excited in this episode to have on a great guest, Michael LaFargue. He is a real estate broker with Coldwell Banker Residential Hyde Park, and he's won the 2018 Good Neighbor Award. He's been featured on different interviews on WGN, and he's won many numerous awards, including the 2015 Civil Rights Hall of Fame and the 2016 Most Distinguished Men of Illinois, and even the 2019 Sakuruda Award and the 2017 Dedicated Service within Roseland Award. So definitely we're super honored to have him on. And we also have on Stewart Morales. He is the commercial broker with CBRNT, that's Coldwell Banker Commercial NRT. And he has distinguished himself as well among many commercial brokers within the real estate business, and we're super fortunate to have him back on the show a second time, and hopefully we'll have him on a third and a fourth time. But today we're going to talk about the difference between the challenges within real estate on the residential side and on the commercial, and really what the two differences are. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to another episode of the John Gill Podcast Show. And today we're super excited to have on two special guests. The first with me is Michael E. LaFargue, and he is with Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage. And we also have on Stewart Morales. He is with Coldwell Banker Commercial NRT. And before we begin, let's go ahead and, if you get a chance, check out our partner Element Studios. That's EL3 MENT Studios. They do great corporate headshots, full real estate photography. Go ahead and check them out. And as always, if you want more of residential real estate investment advice, business strategy, or mindset, please like the channel and go ahead and subscribe. And don't forget to ring the bell. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Stellar. It's good seeing you.
Excellent. Good to be back.
Perfect. Well, quickly now I want to just introduce Michael LaFargue. He has been with Coldwell Banker Residential, and he was the team leader for the South Side of Chicago and then South Cook County. And in 2008, he was the independent realtor for Chatham Realty, correct? And he has also been involved in the commercial real estate and as a property manager. He was a property manager for U.S. Equities Realty. He managed about 16 acres as well over at the Willowbrook Tech Center. Sure. And as I also see a facilities manager, managed about 30 Chicago public schools and 8 athletic stadiums. Mm-hmm. It's quite the experience and background there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So talk to us, how did you get involved in real estate? And
That's an interesting story. I was an IBMer. You can tell I'm wearing a blue tie, whitish shirt, right, and a blue suit. But my father, he was a realtor and also a real estate appraiser. So as the economy and things changed at IBM, my father asked, well, why don't you join me at the appraisal company? So I became a real estate appraiser, statewide, state licensed, and insured. Always important. So that's how I made my entree into real estate.
Perfect. And Stewart, we had you on one of the last episodes that we had. You want to just go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself as well?
Certainly. I started in real estate back in 2003. And prior to that, I was in sales, and just making lateral moves to real estate really opened up my horizons, expounded things. You realize that there are no limits in real estate. You can make it what you want it, and you can create value to customers, and in turn, you create value of yourself. So happy to be back. So happy that Michael is here too. He's going to tell a wonderful story about his experience. And thank you again, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michael, you mentioned right now you're in residential and you're making the transition back into commercial as well. Can you explain how Coldwell Banker distinguishes the two a little bit and the whole process there?
Certainly. We have the residential group, which is under the name Coldwell Banker Residential. And they can do commercial sales, and I have, but there's a more experienced group called Coldwell Banker Commercial NRT. Now, those are the gentlemen that have gone through CCIM commercial classes and gotten designations, and they are fully insured through errors and omissions insurance as they work through commercial, retail, residential, industrial, and other properties.
I understand. So go into a little bit detail about the errors and omissions for someone who doesn't know exactly what that is, and what's the big difference there between both.
Well, errors and omissions insurance is very important in our industry. Once you get your real estate residential license, that's only the very first step. There are so many avenues to work in to satisfy a customer, and so many uncontrollable variables where a mistake can be made. So an errors and omissions insurance is crucial to a realtor in protecting their livelihood, their family, in case a mistake is made.
Perfect. And let's get into the details now of being in the real estate business. You know, the industry has its challenges. A lot of, I think, people who are wanting to get involved in this business don't understand that it really takes a lot of education, a lot of mentoring. And can you explain for someone who's looking to get involved in the industry, kind of what are the first steps that they should take?
If you look around you, real estate is everywhere. It's the land you walk on, it's the home that you live in, it's the building that you go to shop in. As you walk into that building, you might look around and notice the doors open smoothly, the entranceway is clean, and there's no fingerprints on the door. That's the service staff that is doing that. That's an essential part of real estate. People don't realize that. And that staff even must know what chemicals to use, mix, in order to provide safety to themselves and to the building that they're maintaining. So very few people think of that as a first step in a ladder. I'm a janitor. But then there's also the building engineer that maintains the rooftop units, the vessel or the boiler, and other aspects of the property. Those people have to be educated and trained on boiler maintenance, mechanics, HVAC services, even customer relations, because they're serving an entire building. Then you have the facility managers that kind of oversee the entire facility and schedule meeting rooms. And there are so many assets and facets of being in real estate. It's crucial to our economy and the world, and it touches you when you don't even think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great points. And Stewart, you want to add a little bit onto that?
Sure. I mean, real estate is a whole. It's just not buying a building or leasing space. It's one big ecosystem. And like Michael said, everybody has their role. And one thing about being a broker, specifically commercial broker, all those roles, I'm ever appreciated for the service they provide. But conversely, I have to be educated in what they do to provide service for my clients, to fit them with the needs that they want, and to guide them as a real estate broker. So certainly, that's an excellent point, Michael. Good way of looking at it.
Yeah. And we didn't even touch upon the soft skills, the accountants,
For sure,
the finance people, the people that do mezzanine layered financing for commercial buildings downtown and around the country. It's layer upon layer upon layer, and it's simply, you can find your niche.
Right.
But it's important to have insurance.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, those are all, I think there's so many different facets, like you mentioned, that it's important for us to understand and learn each component if we're going to have success in the industry. And now, what has been the transition like going from residential to commercial, and some of the challenges there?
Well, in residential, it's a fascinating field. You work with multiple people, multiple personalities. You're constantly reintroducing yourself to family, friends, and friends and neighbors, sharing with them that you are a realtor and you're looking forward to helping someone. So you have the buyer and typically the seller, and they're buying the most important, expensive asset of their life, typically a home. So with each of those buyers, you have to be very, very careful in assisting them in their need. And you're assisting them. You're not taking them. You're not guiding them. You're not forcing them. You're assisting them in making a very important decision. And I think the question was
the difference between, well, the challenges that you'd seen from being in the residential field and that transition into commercial. Okay. So it seems like with the residential side, you're right. You're holding the buyer's hands. You're more from my understanding is that you're guiding them. And then now, how different is that from commercial?
So, as you're working with a residential person, now they found the home, and it's time to do the due diligence, as you have done in the many buildings and properties that you've purchased, and congratulations. So there's due diligence on the commercial side that it explodes in complexity.
Absolutely.
You're looking at your rent rolls. You're looking at who has paid on time at those rent rolls. Correct. You are not only walking through the building, looking at the maintenance and possibly where you could make savings and the boilers and the electrical systems, as knob and tube wiring in there. You are also looking at environmental aspects. Is there asbestos in the drywall? How much is the lead paint encapsulated, and are these potential clients safe? If you're working at if you're buying a retail, maybe office warehouse, is it sinking? Was it built on a lake? Right. Okay, that had to be filled in. And believe it or not, I had managed a building such as that many years ago.
It started sinking?
It was sinking, and it had some very high-end clients in that building. Wow. But because they had a good property manager, they stayed until the property was sold. Wow. And this was out in the west suburbs. So how do you stabilize a building? Okay, how do you anchor that building? How do you do your due diligence on the building? How is a property manager maintaining his records? Are they bound properly? Are the contractors for that property, are they on the added insured list of those vendors? There's a whole world to understand. And then you have the experts such as Stewart, the leasing side. There are so many avenues in analyzing a lease. Are the taxes deferred? Are there are just so many. And a person such as Stewart is a specialist in that and knows how to negotiate on the endless areas that there are in lease negotiations. So I hope that explains
absolutely
some of the differences.
I mean, the complexities are vast. You're talking, in a residential home, it seems like there's not as many pitfalls or due diligence items that you're going to obviously need on a much larger, complicated deal as commercial. Stewart, do you want to explain some of those? I think it would be great to highlight what some of those, if you didn't have the right sort of due diligence, talk about some of the nightmares or some of the craziness that you've seen.
First, I'd like to just kind of echo a little bit about his points about the residential way of doing things and the way you look at that transaction versus to commercial, how you actually view it. And I'll be short, but definitely remind me of the question you just asked. If you can, I like to rant. So I have to explain it like I'm talking to a fifth grader, like I'm looking in the mirror. I'm the fifth grader. So just to encapsulate what he's saying about residential versus commercial in the transaction, when you do a residential transaction, you did all your due diligence, and I'm not going to be very specific because that is his area's expertise. You finally get down, you get to the table, everything is signed, done, you get the keys, you go home, done. Well, guess what? Commercial real estate, You do the transaction, you do all the due diligence. There's always in every real estate commercial transaction, no matter how smooth it starts, it's how it finishes, and it always ends up in that 11th hour of critical things. Earnest money needs to be more, just everything. The transfer tax has to be over there. All this stuff. You got to move all this stuff out of this place. We didn't know that. We want environmental done on that property now. All this stuff just goes on. You know what? We want to get an inspection again, and so on and so forth. I could go on and on. So the real difference is when you finish that residential transaction, you're done. You're home. When you finish or about to finish a commercial transaction, it's only the beginning. Because now when it's yours and it's done, now it's time to put your money where your mouth is, and evaluation. Make sure you get those tenants. Maybe hire a different broker from a different company just to handle your leasing. Have a property management company different from the company that you hired that leasing agent. Just all this stuff that goes on and on and on. Maybe changing the building to fit a certain person that ends up being an anchor tenant that you didn't even think of before. So just encapsulate one more time. Commercial, when the transaction ends, the work only begins tenfold versus residential. Would you guys kind of agree on that?
And you reminded me of another great point.
Yeah.
Retail. Suppose you just bought a retail center. Are those books properly reconciled? Annually, you have to reconcile what the tenant pays on a net lease, as I learned. So that they overpaid. Do you owe them? And then even suppose they have that statement where if the center or their business makes so much money, they get a discount. Yeah. There's so much involved on the commercial side, as you are aware in your business.
Yeah. Well, and that's important because I think even an investor maybe that wants to transition into commercial from residential, those are the areas that they have to really focus on. And you hit different points that I want to also dive in deeper. You mentioned anchoring. What exactly is an anchor tenant?
I guess I'll answer it. Yeah, when you're specifically for a strip mall or larger malls, strip mall, bigger malls, medium size, you want to make sure if you're going to purchase a retail center, and it could have 20 shops or it could have 50 shops, you want to make sure that whether it does or doesn't, you want to have that anchor tenant deal in place and facilitate it for the next X amount of years, because that's where you're going to basically draw most of your earnings. So that's your anchor. That's where you're going to build your business. So you can do a pro forma, you can do all your evaluations, and you're going to realize that, well, at least I know I'm going to net this much or gross this much in income. And you hope to net it because you have that idea of what you're going to net at the end of the year, but at least you're going in there with an anchor tenant. Yeah. Conversely, if you don't have an anchor tenant, I would advise you to make sure you pay a lot less for that property because it's non-stabilized asset. Mm-hmm. So you want to try to create that stabilized asset. And that's tough. That's tough when you don't have that anchor tenant. You might have to demise that space. And those anchor tenants are called big boxes, right, within a mall. So you might have to devise that space to facilitate other smaller tenants to encapsulate this anchor tenant that you don't have. So anchor tenant is huge when it comes to retail.
Good point. Jewel,
yes.
Target, those are considered big box anchor tenants.
Okay.
And what happens when an anchor tenant, for example, as they've done on the south side, they say, oh, we no longer want to be here. We're leaving, and now we're moving elsewhere. Wow. What happens to the investor in that property?
Yeah. And it also, I think it creates concern for all of the other smaller tenants that are ordering the anchor tenant because, I think they're relying. Yeah, that's why it's the anchor. A perfect term to describe that. And let's, I like to hop back from residential to commercial because, again, we're talking real estate, the umbrella of real estate, and we're going into each different area. But let's go back into just residential. Okay. For a buyer that is looking to take their first plunge into buying their home, what are the first steps that they should take?
Well, one of the first steps that they should do is what most people do is now look at the internet and study the market. There's plenty of applications and websites that can target a neighborhood by the neighborhood, or if you want to live near work, maybe a mile radius of work, they can do that type of analysis. What's within a mile radius from where I work or transit system? It's very important for a realtor and a buyer to have what is called a buyer's consultation, okay? And sometimes the buyer is so excited about getting out and going and look for a property that they don't have that consultation. And sometimes a realtor is so busy and just interested in making a sale quickly that they don't have that consultation. So what occurs during a buyer's consultation is the realtor meets the client and sometimes the family to get an understanding of their wants, interests, and needs. Are there any people in the home that will have special needs, and need ramps or some wider doors? What is the person's financial status? Now, a realtor is a realtor, but a buyer should be pointed in the direction to consult with a lender. Okay, it can be a broker who can go out to multiple lenders and find a deal financing that works with this buyer specifically, or it could be a direct lender, such as a major bank or a group as a guaranteed rate, let's just say. Now, the buying process, there's much to it, and I don't want to take too much time.
No, this is a great, I think someone who's going to be listening to this wants to hear the details.
Okay. Yeah, it comes from the heart and a lot of caring for a person, okay? You can lose your shirt in real estate, but so you want someone that's going to care for you. So we understand the realtor and the buyer, they share information with others about the wants and needs. The buyer then consults with a lender about financing. Now, in this market gives the buyer leverage, and you want leverage in real estate, correct? So once you're pre-approved for a loan, now you have an idea of how much you can afford. Maybe you can buy a $500,000 or a $200,000 home, but now you know, hey, I only want to spend $150,000, and this is approximately how much the mortgage would be. All right. So when you go out into the field, you're more comfortable in what you're asking to see and what you can afford. So now you and the realtor are starting to meet your objectives. Also, the realtor, if the buyer does not have a real estate attorney, people don't think that they're that important up front. But you want to bring your team together. So a realtor can refer a number of real estate attorneys to you, or one, but it's important that I share several so you can make your choice on what attorney you want and how the personalities work. So now you've got 3 parts of your team. Oh, by the way, down the road, I will need a home inspector. Just in case I go out to that first home and I love it, do I have that part of my team together? Your realtor or a friend can refer you to home inspectors. And there's all types of home inspectors in all price ranges. Some can look at the water. They have the toys where they can see there's moisture behind this wall. Some will have the flyover equipment, the drones to look at your roof.
Yeah, it's getting real technical. They're doing all sorts of gadgets these days, right?
There are. And so now this buyer's consultation, you discuss that. Now, in the past, future buyer, realtors in the past only represented the homeowner. So if I came to Stewart's mansion and brought buyer there years ago, even though Stewart has a realtor listing the property, I still represented the seller. wow, is that fair to the buyer? So nowadays the laws have changed, and it's called agency. So it's important that the buyer understand that his buyer's representative represents him and will keep all of your confidentialities confidential so that his agent does not have any leverage against, and vice versa, okay? Agents now represent their clients, okay, for their client's best interest, to get the best deal and to negotiate the best deal that they can. So now we've talked about agency. However, does the buyer understand that, I love old homes. I was brought up in a home, wood frame with a big porch wrapped around and 100 years old. But does the buyer understand that any home built before 1978 might have lead-based paint?
Right. That's a great point. Yes.
And so the buyer's consultation is hugely important. And then now the buyer might want to buy a house in 30 days. It's important that you set their limits or share how the market works. And if they're a cash buyer, they might be able to find and buy a property in 30 to 40 days.
Right, but the realistic expectation is that it may not be the 30 days. I mean, we're talking sometimes 90 days, could be a little further out. Yes. And ultimately that's because, it could be sometimes really the borrower's fault not to put the blame, but what happens is if you do not provide the documents to your lender that they're asking for, sometimes that can drag it out. Sometimes it could just be the lenders just taking their sweet time, and that can drag it out. And, I think we've all seen things like that.
Yes.
So setting the realistic expectation, like you said, through that consultation, and I'm glad that's what you do, that you bring in the buyer, you say, here's step 1. We're going to go through step 1 all the way to the end, to step 10. We're going to show you all the different components of, the home ownership process. And we're going to explain to you the realistic expectations of the deal, the timelines. It's great that you want to close in 30 days, but it may not be the case.
You are very experienced. Yes,
right.
You've been through it many times.
Yeah.
So level setting with the client. And Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you might not believe this, but once you're pre-approved, you might there's a 50% chance that you might actually purchase a home. So a realtor who's paid on 100% commission, no pension and anything else, they are looking at you and they really want to work with you, but is there a fit? And that buyer's consultation is very important. Now, even though once you find a home, there's a 75% chance you may close. Now, I'm not saying that to scare you, but there are things that happen, deaths in the family, accidents, or you went out and bought the fur coat and you didn't realize that was going to hit your credit, right. Or the fur socks. So there's a lot to the buyer's consultation. And if there's a fit and you feel comfortable, the realtor, if he's a professional, he will ask to have a buyer's representation agreement signed with you. Yes. So that, you are my client and we have a working relationship. And it's with me, it's an easy get out of jail card if you change your mind and don't want to have that relationship anymore, because it is a relationship you're building. And this gentleman is an expert on relationship building.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've seen the way you work, and this is why I wanted you to be my team member. Calling people, talking to people, not only before, during the sale, but afterward.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I hope I answered your question.
No, absolutely. And, it's great because you get into so many other amazing facets that I want to dive deeper into. And you mentioned something about lead-based paint and agency. And so that's basically part of the disclosure process. I think that a seller has an obligation to provide certain disclosures to a buyer. And it's our job to ensure that we're getting those documents at the very beginning. What are disclosures exactly?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. you make this conversation very easy because even in the buyer's consultation, we talk about radon gas, and that's one of the disclosures that have to be signed. So very briefly, the disclosures are typically in a residential deal. You have a residential disclosure where the seller, Stewart, fills out a form stating that he is aware or not aware of any defects in his home, and there's about 30 categories. And the new forms even have the category of that the seller is aware that his home was or was not a methamphetamine.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's always...
How common is it that we're seeing on the disclosures if this was a methamphetamine building?
It's always great for lab, and I've never run into one.
I haven't either.
Yes.
Oh.
I think there was one that I came across that I was like, I don't know how this house blew up because the land was just there, and I was like, but there's been talk and some gossip that there might have been something. I'm like, okay, now I understand why this is on.
One shot blow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a one shot.
Exactly. I've seen enough of the Netflix series Breaking Bad to come to come up with my suspicions on how that place blew up. But continue. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. When does the movie come out? It's coming out soon, isn't it? So that's the one disclosure that on the residential side. The second one is the lead-based paints. So the disclosure asks if the owner is aware of had lead-based painting test on the paint in his home, and if he has, does he have publications or reports on that? Most of the time, people have not. I've run into a couple of people that work for the EPA, and they have had those reports, and for asbestos as well. Then this next radon report is radon. Radon is a natural gas that is within the bowels of the earth, and it permeates through all over the world. But the important thing is if you have children, radon gas can cause lung cancer, okay? And so you want to be aware of that. So the same thing as lead-based paint. The disclosure asks if the owner is aware of radon in the house, and if they have any reports, and so that's disclosed. So those are three disclosures. There used to be mold forms, okay, but there's 100,000 types of mold, and I think 25 can kill you. Wow.
And let's talk about that mold issue because I've seen in certain deals and even deals that we were involved in that sometimes a buyer sees a little bit of mold in the bathroom and they want to kill the deal. How serious? I mean, is that something worth throwing in the towel for and saying, okay, I don't want to be involved anymore in this property because of a little mold that's in the back that's behind the toilet or on the ceiling?
Sometimes home buying is emotional, okay, more than a commercial property because we're looking at investment to investment. So, no, I would say it's good to be aware of it. When you have your home inspector can have a mold test and a radon test, and he can test the lead-based paint and almost any other environmental concern that you might have within the purchase of the home. But if it's a little bit of, we're breathing mold right now.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank God we all are comfortable in this environment we're in. But it's a natural fact and it's not a deal killer, not at all.
And there's remediation out there. There's remediation companies out there that can fix it. So, at the end of the day, I think that's all part of that consultation that you're going to receive, which is, the expectations we talked about earlier, which is, there are going to be things that come up during inspection, not to worry about. There's always going to be a solution to every problem. And that's the beauty of real estate and having these consultations is that you understand that, things will come up. But the reality is it's not something that hasn't come up before, and there's going to be companies out there that can remediate, that can fix, that can resolve those items that come up during the inspection.
Correct. And your realtor, he is your team member. He is on your side if you've chosen the right one. And you got to rely on your team, your attorney, your realtor, your home inspector, because they're working in your interest.
Yes. And Stuart, we're going to go to you real quick. We want to know, how different is the inspection process of residential versus commercial?
Very different. There's a lot more liberties in commercial. If you know that there's some certain material defect, you're supposed to absolutely, disclose it. So if you know, but it's different. The laws are a little different in commercial versus residential. So on that note, if you're a buyer and if you want to do an inspection, certainly kick the tires, roll down the windows, all that. If you want to go deeper, depending on where you're buying and depending what type of commercial property you're buying. Obviously, if you're buying something like a retail strip center, maybe not so much. But if you're buying a multifamily unit, maybe 4 units and less will be residential, but somewhere around 4 units, then maybe you want to, do these tests. Maybe you even want to get, an environmental test. It all depends where it's at. It's near a wetland, so on and so forth. But generally in the city, since all the homes are built so close together and all the commercial properties are lumped together, it's not like the deal killer, like you said. There's a lot of ways to mitigate with any problem, and that's part burden on your broker and part burden on the buyer. So, but let me make it absolutely clear: if a broker is aware of any type of material defect, he should absolutely, it is part of his license that's at stake to disclose it. So let's not take no shortcuts. Yeah, absolutely. Disclosure equals prevention. Eliminates lawsuits. So you're there to carry the ball into the end zone and make it as smooth as possible. And the way to make it smooth as possible is to disclose, which equals to inform.
Amazing. And one of the steps that I want to also bring up is, you were also you're a licensed real estate appraiser, correct?
Yeah, I was, yes.
Or was yeah. And, one of your primary clients, different lending institution, mm-hmm. Explain how important is the appraisal process. And one other thing is that I see brokers are always not all the time, but recently from, I would say, 2013 to maybe about 20, even a few years ago, the problem was with the appraisals coming in too low because the market was still, getting better. Talk about what an appraisal is and how a broker can dispute appraisals that are just way off.
The appraisals are very important. An appraiser is supposed to be an independent eye, a non-biased, to come up with a value of a property. Okay, so if the realtor has done his homework and on both sides, and there's a negotiation, usually a property will appraise to the price. Every now and then, a property will appraise lower than the purchase price. Yes, it is a nightmare.
Seller's nightmare, I should say.
And it gets even more complicated if it's an FHA purchase, and we haven't talked about the difference between FHA, financial, conventional, and cash purchases. So, if it comes out lower, then maybe the seller reduces the price and the home is sold. Also, it is very important. Stewart is a martial artist, and I used to be one. And there's a lot of different strategies that you have to play up front in order to win that tournament or fight. So one is your realtor should run all of his comparisons and meet the appraiser at the property on the day of the appraisal and say, I am an expert in this area and you're an expert, but do you mind if I share these properties with you? I think this will prove the value. So now you've kind of protected yourself up front, and there's a good chance that the realtor, the appraiser, will look at these and might take them in consideration, especially nowadays. When I was an appraiser, at that time, the bank called you directly and said, we're selling this house. We'd like you to go out and appraise it. And allegedly there was some chicanery, or possibly appraisers were blamed, and it really wasn't on them, but loans were just being given away no matter what your credit was, or capabilities were. But the fact is, banks used to call the appraiser went out and appraised the property, allegedly came back with an independent, non-biased report. Here's the value of the property. Because of those challenges, now it's a middleman. So the bank calls a middleman, okay, and the middleman then calls an appraiser to go out. Now, the property could be in Saginaw, beautiful area of Chicago, and this appraiser might be from another area unknown, even Indiana, okay, and he's coming to your area to appraise your property, and he doesn't know the difference in the brick style of the home, or what's important, and the school districts, and that, oh no, if you cross the street, you're in that district, and how important that is in appraising in that area. So yes, it's important for that, one, the realtor to meet the appraiser, two, that you know how to dispute an appraisal. One, as soon as you get the report, you say, we dispute this report, and you send your comps, and maybe it can be adjusted. Okay. I haven't been in a dispute for quite a while, but sometimes adjustments can be made.
I had it happen to one of my and you're right. I had to send some supporting documents, some of another comparables, and it was able to get adjusted by about an extra $10,000. That was the difference between the deal being canceled and moving forward. So, but that's great because that shows that obviously you are sending that you're doing your part. You're sending those comparables from the get-go. And again, it just creates a great foundation from the beginning, and it helps your appraiser. I think that could be a great thing. Now, how are the appraisals performed on a commercial property? And because again, I think the theme here is we're really distinguishing. We're looking at residential and we're comparing commercial, right?
Yeah, interestingly enough, commercial, again, it's a totally different animal because you're talking so much more volume, right? I could share, I want to say recently, and I will, recently meaning within the last 17 years. There was a plot of land, a huge plot of land that me and one of the persons I partner with, we did all our due diligence. I mean, we ran the numbers backwards and forwards, and that's very important. Again, this is a strip of land. Backwards and forwards, the numbers, meaning from the end of a transaction. And what I mean by the end of a transaction, when everything is built, and 5 years from now you want to sell and cash out as a this. So it was a lot. We did all that in 24 hours, within 24 hours, and we presented. And it was like, it was a long drive from where we were. We were out in Lake County. We drove all the way back into the city, somewhere in the vast city of Chicago. And, you had that adrenaline rush. Yeah. You go in there, you present, and long story short, only recently it happened, we actually did not get that deal. And we're looking in the Crane's business report, and there's that deal that we like to use the word pitch, as in baseball pitch, or, you're throwing your pitch. So, and they interviewed somebody else. The Crane's reporter did a little more of his part. He interviewed somebody else, and the number that they came up with was pretty much the same number we came up with, price per square foot. The number that the other real estate brokerage firm, and it's one of the big ones. So, there's a lot of relationships with bigger real estate firms. Not to say we're a little one by no means, but it's one of the bigger ones. And their evaluation is way too high. And guess what? Who suffers? The client. Right. So, a lot of the just to answer your question, a lot of the evaluations or the appraisal of properties, a lot of it's based because you have investors. This is a commercial property. You got to look at the nuts and bolts of any building. You got to look at the location. Those are just rules of real estate. But ultimately, you want to, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, in some cases both, and I've done all three, you want to make sure you understand the market. And guess what? The market is not a zip code, certainly not an area code. In some cases, the market changes block by block. Yeah. So, and I'm sure you can think of an example, and you can think of an example, but specifically in commercial real estate, these block by block differences is just huge in the exit strategy of any property that you're going to buy at first, hold, whether it's 5 or 10 years, or sell within a few years. So it's a lot different in commercial versus residential.
And if I may add, you were very nice, and you're a numbers master, because this is one of Stewart's tools.
There it is.
The old the HB 12C.
I love that calculator.
Yeah,
it's one of the best. Yeah.
So when an appraiser appraises a residential property, he's looking at two methods of evaluation: the comparison approach and the reconstruction or replacement approach. Okay, not the replication, but reconstruction, something similar to what you have. In a commercial side, okay, they are looking at the net income divided by rate times value. Okay, or we call it net operating income rate and value. Anyway, that's hugely important in appraising a commercial property. Okay. Of any type. And then using that formula, you can compare this investment maybe to a financial investment. So do I buy a bond in Zoom or something?
Right.
Wish we all did.
Yeah, stock in Zoom, right? Versus this building.
Amazing. Yeah, and that is the big key difference, right? I mean, one, you're looking again at those comparables. The other one, you're just looking strictly at the financial numbers, and then getting your return or your cap rate. And I think to tie it all in together, residential and commercial, they're both great investments. They each have their specific challenges, but at the end of the day, as long as you're getting the right consultation and you're getting the right consultation, I think sums it up. You're going to be positioned in a way that you can have success in both different departments.
Yeah, that's true. And I think Stewart said it early. A realtor's, our job is to increase your net worth through real estate. And that can be done through a single family home, or maybe that buyer didn't realize that if I bought a 2-unit building, still considered a single-family home, and FHA, you could get, approvable. You can have someone paying a part of your mortgage, or, wow, you could buy a 3-unit building and have 2 people paying a portion of your mortgage. Now you got a bigger building, and you have a business going with tax deductions, because you are now a landlord. There's a reason for that term, right? Yes. And let me blow your mind. You can get a 4-unit building too. Okay, commercial begins typically at 5, depending on the state you're in, 5-unit building or 6-unit building and above for residential. Then you have the industrial, commercial, and all the other types of commercial properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to thank both of you for being today on the show. Michael, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Look for my magazine.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. So what is it? Is it American Lifestyle?
This is American Lifestyle magazine. This is simply a promotional magazine that it's important to stay in contact and develop relationships. That's important in this industry. So people that have purchased properties from me before have received this magazine. Sometimes I send it out. Well, it goes out quarterly. Sometimes I'll skip a year and send it out. And but My name is Michael LaFargue, Coldwell Banker Residential. My phone number is 773-251-0760, 251-0760, and you can call me, text me anytime. I'm readily available. Okay, thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, that is super impressive. I have to say, I've never seen a broker have their own magazine, and that is spectacular.
Well, if you look in here, Stewart's in here as a commercial broker, part of the Coldwell Banker NRT team. Okay, and people can save money. I've sent it to my clients, and
so Oh, I'm sorry. What we're looking at here, this is a solar panel as well. So you're also selling solar panels, it appears.
Yeah, people have purchased their homes and spent a lot of money through me as a realtor, and so now I can call them and share with them there's an opportunity that we may be able to save you money through solar energy. 1 hour of solar energy hitting the earth provides more solar energy than we consume in a year.
Wow.
I know, I just learned that last week.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It does, doesn't it?
Itself, really.
And
Wow.
but the government is providing 20 last year was 30% rebates if you purchase panels for your home. This year 26%. Next year might be 20. The year after that it's going a lot lower. So it's time. ComEd, if you notice, is saying it's time. This is ComEd states this is your guide to going solar. Throughout the state, there's a requirement that 25% of the energy by a certain amount of time be provided sustainably through solar. Wow. And so there's incentives. And then there's actually no cost to purchase solar if you lease the panels. I'm advertising, but it's an opportunity for me to re-engage with my clients and save them money. So thank you so much for.
It's a great add value. I mean, you're providing them already with the property that already has value, and then this is just another avenue or technique that they can just continue to help increase their bottom line.
Yeah, and you've done that, I've heard, through you as a manager of the 1,000.
Well, yeah, well, we,
Of course you have.
yeah, well, we not that much, but we've been involved in brokering some to that extent. But what I will say is that the solar panels is definitely the way to go. One point that I want to see is that you said there's something the difference between leasing, you can actually pick them up for free.
Yes. Well, when you purchase the solar panels, for example, you might spend. I have one client that wants to pay cash. It's $30,000, and they'll get a 26% rebate from the government and the state of Illinois. This is a great state right now to purchase solar. They'll get a rebate from the state. Okay. So if you purchase, there are those incentives. However, if you lease, these panels have a 25-year bumper-to-bumper warranty. They're now built. They are so strong.
Like tanks.
Yeah, like tanks. It's amazing. I thought they were pretty delicate, but they're very strong. And the solar companies will maintain them. They will track their energy uses through the year, and they guarantee your savings. And if you don't reach those savings through those panels and any degradation through those panels, then they will credit you back and pay a part of that bill.
So
okay, it's a guaranteed saving.
Amazing. Michael, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And Stewart, we want to thank you also for being on the program. Again, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
Please do via email. I'm going to give you a couple emails. It's STEWARTM as in Mary, the word brokerage @gmail.com, or here's even a longer one, STEWARTMORALES@CBCNRT.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And real quick, I do want to thank you so much for the gifts that you brought in today. That was a very special gesture. And, we have an amazing bottle of bourbon. And so, which is, I'm telling you, they did their you did your homework, because he knows that I'm a bourbon man, and this is amazing. So thank you so much again. I really appreciate that, and would love to have you both back on the show. You're always a guest here, and again, if you haven't already done so and you like what you heard, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ding, ring the bell to get those notifications, and check out our partner Element Studios. Thank you so much. Okay, and we have on Moseline Parker on the show. She's on the call right now. She's a teacher and actually one of Michael's clients. And Michael, you want to go ahead and tell us a little about Moseline?
Sure, certainly. Moseline is a Chicago public school educator. She's very active in her community with the union and her sorority. And one of my favorite clients because of her personality, but really because of her strong understanding of what she is looking for in real estate. And Moseline, you did share with me that one of your objectives was to be a real estate investor. But I'm wondering if you could share with the audience what your experience was in looking for a home and looking for property, and what it was like to work with a realtor that had, I don't want to be biased, but that had your interest.
How is it like working with the best realtor in the city is what he wanted to say.
No, he wanted to say, how is it like working with the best realtor in the world?
Or in the world there.
Yeah. Before I met Michael, I had been looking for property, I think, I want to say 3 years prior, and the realtors that I had were not a good fit. And it was like, okay, here's some property. I showed it to you, now buy it. And when Michael came along, I really thought that I was on HGTV or something. You know, when he came on, it was like asking what I was looking for, you know, which the other realtors did too. But he listened. You know, he took notes. And so when we went to a property, the one thing that I could say, you need an excellent realtor, not just to know the area, but to get to know you. When we would go into some properties, I would go in and I would look at it, and he was like, okay, I could tell you don't like this. He was able to read me. And it got to a point where we had been working for over a year, and I started to feel guilty. And I said, he showed me one property. I said, I'm going to get this property because I felt bad. Because he had been taking the time, and it wasn't like, okay, let me take her out again. I'm just going to show her this and move on. He was just as diligent, gave 150% of himself. And I said, I'm going to get this property. And he told me, no, you're not. You don't like this property. Do you remember that, Michael? And he was like, no, you're not going to get it. And we kept going along. And then finally, I wanted a building. Finally, it was a property that had 2 houses next to it. And I went to look at it, and I was like, oh, I can't afford this. And Michael was like, let us do some work here. Let me do some research. And then he said to me, you wanted buildings, but you still have 2 properties, and you don't have anybody over your head. And after about a year and a half, I know it was more than a year and a half, I purchased some property because of Michael. He did not give up on me.
Amazing.
He did not give up, and yes.
That's amazing.
And now I want some commercial property, so he's going to be working with that with my sister and myself.
That's amazing.
So the main thing is to get an excellent, and I recommend Michael, if you don't have a realtor, I recommend him 150%.
And do you mind if I chime in? You said now you want to make the transition into commercial real estate. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
And what is it exactly about commercial real estate that really interests you the most?
Well, my sister and I were talking about opening up a store, and so I've always felt that it's better to be the owner than a renter, even though renting is good.
Yes.
And so with her and I going in together, we were talking, and I was talking to Mike, and I'm like, hey, is it very expensive to get like commercial property, maybe a little mall that has 4 units or what have you. And he said, let me look into it. I'll get back to you. He said, it's not, you could do it. So I want to go that route. I want to go that route because it's the next step. Okay, it's the next step for us to do it. And if we want to own the store, it would be better for us to own the mall, own the little strip mall or what have you. Nothing really elaborate, just something small to start out with and then go from there.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. I didn't know you had worked with any realtors before. No, I think one we talked about, but you did.
Yeah.
I totally forgot or didn't realize that. Gosh. But we had a good time together. We had a good time. You knew what you were looking for, and that's so important.
Right. And then I got to the point that once I went out on a couple of, to look at a couple of buildings with Michael, you're not just going to get a realtor. You're going to get somebody that's really knowledgeable, because I would look at the basement if it was a 2-unit and they said it was a basement apartment that you could rent out. Michael would come in and he looked, it's no back door. We can't reach it. We have to go by the standards. He would come out with a tape measure to measure the ceiling from the floor.
Wow.
Something I didn't even think about. He would be in the kitchen and I would be in the kitchen and he'd go in the bathroom and turn on. Okay, the water pressure is good. So things like that he would do, whereas the other realtors I went with, we just walk through, come back out. And I mean, even up until the end, even where I said, I don't know if you need to have this done. I don't know who to contact for that. He's like, I have somebody. And even his people respected him so because, A, he's a good human being. And I don't care if you're a realtor or an educator like myself or somebody that has a podcast like you guys or a lawyer, a doctor. If you're not a good human being, that's going to translate into your profession.
Absolutely.
So him being a human being, he wasn't trying to get anything over. He was like, you're going to live in this place, and I don't want you to get anything that you don't like. And after the closing, he had a gift because one of the units didn't have any curtains, any drapes, or what have you. He gave me a gift to put up some curtains. And so I thought that was really, really special and touched my heart. It really did.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great story. I mean, that really does show you just really how Mike is able to distinguish himself and just add so much value to the transaction. Now, do you mind? I want to talk about, was there anything specifically during the original transaction that, just this, because I think that someone who's looking to buy the first time, is there something that maybe that you saw originally that looked like maybe concerning, but then Mike stepped in and said, you know what, this is something that, we've seen? Or is there something that, like, for example, during the inspection phase or that you said, okay, you started having like a little bit of concerns about on the deal?
Yes. It was in the property that I decided to go in that I wanted. There was, the water didn't come on in the laundry room, and there was a little seepage. And so I'm like, it's a flood in here, but it turned out to be just a little seepage, put some dirt, some bushes or what have you. Over time, if you don't keep, I guess, the gardener putting the mulch or what have you down, right. And that's all it was. And then I had he had people come in and say, this is just, this is all this is, and it could be done for this.
Amazing.
Or, the attic in the other apartment I was concerned about. He's like, this is fine. He had someone come in, they inspected it. Besides my regular inspector that I had, that came in initially, he had other people to back up that was his expert, that had expertise in that field. And I think it was a plumber. Beautiful. I think it was somebody that dealt with structure. And I can't remember the person with the attic. He was an electrician. That's what it was, an electrician, because I was worried about the rise. And it was like, easy fix. And guess what? All of it was an easy fix. So He was like, this property has good bones. That's what he said. Good bones.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And some properties that I went in, like I said, it was a year and a half, maybe longer, when it was like, he was pointing out some things that my eye didn't see. and we walked away. So, like I said, integrity, that's one thing that is ingrained in Michael, and I love it.
Well, perfect. No, Moseline, this is great. We talked on the show a little earlier, just the importance of, of team building. And one of the things that he has is that, he's got the team. And something that we also stressed earlier on was that, a realtor has to have the right team in place to set up a buyer for success. And what you just said right now, just again, strengthens and solidifies what we heard earlier. And that's just that, you have to set all of those pieces in place, and, that he finds solutions, that, problems will arise, but at the end of the day, it's just the solutions are always going to be there. And, but he's able to, use his team and his network to make it happen. And then you just, again, with your story, just, it's a great case study and a great example of how he was able to do that. So, that's amazing, and I want to wish you the very best on your next purchase here. And Mike, do you want to mention anything else?
Thank you so much, because Moseline, you brought up certain memories that I forgot about the electrician, and when we last talked, the swimming pool, and then the installation that she had done afterward, and how that was. The nice thing is, we developed a relationship,
Michael,
and I appreciate that. So thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. If I can interrupt, I want to say one more thing. After I purchased the property, because the property I purchased, the unit was built in the late 60s, so you did not have installation. He even told me, I want you to call this person, and I want you to go through here. And I called them, and they had said, oh, we're finished, call us back next year. And then when I went in, I was like, okay, they came in, they did the winterization. Oh, I can't speak now. What is it called, Michael, that they do? They put the holes in the wall?
Yeah, they insulated.
And they put the installation.
Yeah, installation
into the wall. So he hooked me up with that. And then if I may backtrack to say one other thing about the people that came in, when Michael picked up the phone to call the people that were experts in their field to come out and help, they didn't say, I'll give you 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because they respected him and they had worked with him before. They said, what day do you want me to come? And he gave them the date, and not one person, not one of those men or women, nobody did not fail to show up. They all were there at the time that he asked them to be there.
Amazing.
So I failed to say that, and I had to before we get off here.
Amazing. Well, that's that there it is. that just says it all, It speaks of his character and just the great work that Mike's been doing. So thank you so much, Moseline. It's been great, and wish you again the very best on your next venture there. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.